And if someone could just let me know when it appears on my page, going live.
I think we're there.
Oh, that was quick. Oops. Okay, there we go.
There it
Welcome, everyone. Welcome, panelists. Switching back over to Zoom. Welcome to our Facebook Live panel chat on the subject of frequency. This is kind of I feel like it's a topic that people feel, but maybe don't know so much about how to use it, how to recognize it. So I think it's going to be a fun talk today about this subject, and we have some real experts here too. So I want to begin today by just asking you each to go around and tell us your name and where you are coming from. Megan?
Hi, everyone. Megan, Emily, signing in today from Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas.
Awesome, thank you. Lisa Stokey?
I'm Lisa Stokey, and I'm coming to you today from Colorado, Boulder County, Colorado.
Thank you. Linda?
Hi, I am Linda Polio, and I'm in Sedona, Arizona.
And Joan?
Hello, I'm Joan Advent, and I am in Virginia in the Richmond area.
Awesome. And Cerise?
Hi, I'm Cerise, and I'm in Bergen County, New Jersey.
Awesome. We are doing things all differently today. Now I've got us back on the panel grid. I want to start the conversation today by asking you what would be your definition of frequency and what are the words that you use to describe it? Let's start with Cerise since you're on camera there.
How do I describe frequency? I think
Yeah.
everything is frequency. It's an energy that's emitted from all things. And there are various levels, and the frequencies can change for some things. Everything has a frequency, but then for like ourselves, we resonate at a higher frequency when certain things, when good things are happening and we listen to positive music. And then, if we're sad, watching sad movies, it can lower our frequency. So everything, the way I look at frequency is that it's part of our energy.
Awesome. Linda, how about you?
I agree with Cerise. I think it's really complex because there's the whole quantum science part of frequency and the whole scientific part of frequency. But I think what we're talking about here is sort of individual and collective frequency. Everything is a frequency, colors are frequencies, things are frequencies, and we are full of different kinds of frequencies. So it's just about tapping into the feeling of the frequency. I think that's what we try to do so that we can sort of um, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's sort of complex. And I've been working a lot with frequency lately, and the more that I work with it, the more complex it gets. But it basically is energetic vibrations that are part of everything and that we can tap into, like Suri said, and just move in new directions, high, low, sideways. Yeah, it's been an interesting experience for me, particularly recently, because I'm going in kind of new directions working with frequency that I haven't been before.
Yeah.
So it's
Well,
changing for me.
yeah, well, we'd love to hear more about that. Megan, how about you? Let me come back. Oh, there we
I'm
go.
here. I'm here. I'm here. I'm having a few frequency issues over here on my side. So, when I started thinking of this, I realized, like, what is frequency? I agree, Lena. It's difficult because we get really wordy all of a sudden when we start describing it. And I think on this panel, especially, and our viewers or listeners, we jump immediately into like the energetic world, right? Into the like even the spiritual realm, the frequency of God. Like we start talking about, but when you look it up, it's really like a measurement of speed, of movement, right? You know, and in whatever unit you're measuring it, it's very scientific. It's like, you know, engineers need to understand frequency to create safe buildings, right? And so it's I think it is all encompassing. There's nothing that doesn't have a frequency. And for me, it's more like this vibrational resonance, right? It's like almost like it's a language, really. It's this like output, this like language of all things. And so sometimes the language is very, very obvious, the frequency between people, right? That whether it's tension or love, like we can feel that feeling, right? Or a rock. I mean, there are some of us that can pick up a crystal and our lives can change. And there are some people that are like, I don't get it. I don't feel it. Right. So that to me is the biggest mystery, is how do I pick up on one frequency and someone else doesn't? It's like this whole language that's both scientific and very spiritual, you know? So it's going to be fun.
I love that word that you used, output, because that feels very true, and I've never really thought of it that way. Is there also an input?
Well, I thought of that when as I was saying it myself. I'm like, this is going to come back. I know it is because, right? What about meditation? Which direction? What's the unit of measure there? Is that going inward? Is it an output as well? I suppose if you're sitting in the room with someone who's meditating, it's both at that moment. There's both this inward and outward. So the word output, yeah, that's worth exploring as well.
Yeah. Lisa, what do you think? How would you define frequency, and do you have words that you use to describe it?
Well, this is so far, it's been a really rich conversation. And yeah, I love what everyone is saying so far. When I first thought about this, like the question of it, because I think what I'm hearing so far is that it's something that we can sense, right? I think most everybody here, we can sense it. And so it's been a little bit outside of the bounds of the naming of it, right? And of course there's the scientific, understanding, like someone had said about, vibration. And of course we can um, measure these things, right? Like I'm remembering the very first time that I saw the measurement of frequency of essential oils. And that was probably 20 some years ago. And I just about lost my mind. I was like, oh my God, this is like the coolest thing ever, right? That was probably my first experience of that. But when I saw your question come through, the thing that I immediately saw was water. And I felt like maybe that was a good analogy or comparison because, water is a medium, right? And it's a carrier. And it's also more neutral, and it can hold things, right? We think of like water as holding frequency, which I guess you could say that it does, but then you kind of go, well, what does that mean? Like how does that work? And so I think of frequency as the medium from whatever, like we talk about that origination point is, or talking about the input and the output. And of course, that's almost like kind of a finite way of thinking about it, right? Like there's a beginning and an end. And then we kind of sort of get into that conversation, of infinity, right? And as we know, energy is never created nor destroyed. And so, like, as if any of us here are like energy workers, right, or healers or moms, even, we can take these things in and, like of our child or a client and sense their frequencies, and we can alchemize them inside of ourselves, right? And then change that and bring that back out. So I would say it's probably more like a medium if I had to name it.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that frequency is something that can be simultaneously received and emitted, and also somehow defines your being, is so complicated, is so complex. It just like boggles my mind. And the only thing that I can think of is that we are vortices because vortices also do that. They take in and
Oh,
put out too.
awesome.
So yeah, I'm loving this conversation. Joan, what about you? How would you define frequency?
Mm, well, I don't know if defining it is, I do feel like there have been some very apt definitions offered so far. And as you were posing the question, what has popped into my mind, which is in a more tangible sense, was just this knowing or this learning that I had received at one point about how each of our organs has its own frequency, has its own essence, so to speak. So that came in. And then I was remembering, as Lisa was describing the essential oils, that roses, for example, are known to be like the highest frequency flower. And so if I were to say, what is frequency? Again, so much has already been said, but the way I would think about it is both the, like, what is the frequency of health and well-being, or what is the frequency of wholeness versus what is the frequency of, what's the opposite of that? Like what we're seeing out in the world in many places, like disordered, chaotic frequencies. So I know that's going in in a vastly different direction than you
Yeah,
offered. That's what comes to mind for me.
yeah. How would you distinguish and these are like, I don't know, these seem like questions for like the most advanced quantum physicists that we're going to go ahead and tackle it anyway, even though we have no scientific background. Um, but I'm wondering about the whether this phenomenon of frequency is it simultaneously both physical and energetic? How do those play out?
For me, you're asking
Yes.
me.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so my sense is, and again, frequency overlaps with vibration, overlaps with energy, which has been named already. But I think about the frequency of the frequency of God, which was mentioned. So like the frequency of the stuff of life, of the life force, and the way that it either slows down or patterns in a specific way for each unique whatever expression of life, and or not life, in inert things as well. So it is the stuff of life, the frequency of life that enters a new state, or they talk about like a slower vibration to come into, um, 3D, or to come into tangible life forms as we are here on the earth,
Hmm.
as I understand it.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is that matter has a frequency, but there are frequencies higher than that where matter does not exist because matter is a relatively low frequency state.
More
Right.
dense.
Yeah,
Yes,
more
more
dense.
dense frequency.
Density, that's another way of describing it. So I think about density, resonance, electromagnetic pull
Mhm.
and push,
Mhm.
vibration. I think we mentioned that. Those are, yeah, all kind of interchangeable in our uneducated, on our uneducated platform. Um, yeah,
Can I ask you a question?
sure. Yikes. I was
Me-
just thinking, like, I'm so glad I'm the asker, not the answer.
Well, really, my question is related to, because I'm seeing the spark of enthusiasm as you're taking in all these bits. What, what was it that prompted you to bring this up as a topic? It must be in some way on your mind or in your heart. So what, like, what's your deepest inquiry about this?
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. So I think that it's what you alluded to earlier, that we are becoming increasingly aware of low density, low vibrational experiences and higher vibrational experiences, and how these are coexisting at the same time. And we, as human beings, as sort of carriers of light, like we have options, we have options. And I wanted to explore how we can use frequency to our advantage to lead a more peaceful, more satisfying, more beautiful, more spirit-filled life. So that was kind of does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Good.
Beautiful.
Cerise, um, does the phrase everything is frequency resonate with you? And
Yes.
tell us a little bit about how you started to become aware of frequency, the phenomenon of frequency.
So, I do believe everything is frequency, and I think it started when I read a study about our clothing being frequency, and I hadn't ever thought about that. I know we talked about the roses and other things too, but that we're being intentional, being intentional about the clothing that you wear. And the study showed that linen and wool have like the highest frequency, but also you shouldn't wear them together because then they cancel each other out. And it was the first, and it's actually in the Bible too, which is so fascinating to me that they were aware of this such a long time ago. So I think at that point in time when I was reading that study and I started to be more um, cognizant about my wardrobe and the fabrics that I was putting on my skin and realizing most of the clothes I have are synthetic and and then I started paying attention to how my body would feel wearing the different clothing and the different fabrics. And I was able to tell a different, feel a difference when I actually paid attention to it. So I think for me, that was the start. But yes, I do believe it's in everything. And I do believe the more that I pay attention to it, the more I'm aware of, the frequency of things around me.
Yeah, and I think that where we're headed with that is, in this conversation especially, is when when you start to ask the question, why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel good in this situation and bad in that situation, or with this person or that person, or when I do this and when I do that, or eat this and that? This is what we're talking about. We're talking about what is resonating with us. Linda, can you talk a little bit about how frequency makes itself known in matter? How would we recognize it? And then the second part of that question would be, how do we recognize it in the invisible world? So the visible versus the invisible.
Well, I mean, I think to a certain extent, I think speaking about fabric, I think that frequency is the fabric of the universe. So I think everything that could possibly exist exists as a frequency in the universe or in whatever we think is the universe. So we sort of, the reason we resonate with things is because we resonate with some thread in that universe. And the more people that resonate with that thread, the thread gets larger and the frequency gets more pronounced. And I think we connect with it basically viscerally. We feel it. We're like tuning forks. We're basically walking tuning forks, and we have all kinds of frequencies. Our emotions are frequencies, our thoughts are frequencies, our experiences are frequencies, and these experiences and these thoughts begin to resonate both within us and deeper within us. That goes into sort of some quantum inner universe. And it also resonates with other people and with the larger universe. And I think we sort of connect through feeling. It's visceral. You can feel it. You don't really think about it. If you apply your brain to it, you're usually in the wrong place because your brain wants to take you one place, but then there's that thing inside you, this sort of inner resonance that which is a frequency, and that frequency is trying to lead you somewhere. And different experiences, different people, they will have either a similar, a resonant frequency or a dissonant frequency. So it's about following that path of what you feel inside of you. But the first thing you have to do is find that resonance and find that frequency inside of you that is truly you and not what has been programmed into you by culture and religion and advertising and everything else. And once you find that, then you can feel your way through what is right for you and what is best for you and what will make you happiest.
Mm.
Did that answer the question?
Yeah, it's such a deep topic. I think about going to the groceries, and it's such a deep topic in terms of our potential to create and to understand the world around us. I think about going into a grocery store and holding a tomato versus holding a can of tomato soup, and how different those can be to people who are sensitive. So we can, kind of begin to make decisions about what's best for us based on this paying attention to the frequency of things.
Yeah, it's definitely like a skill that you learn. And even holding a regular tomato versus a truly organic tomato.
Mhm.
There is, when you've been working with frequencies for a while, it is not difficult to hold two tomatoes and know which one is organic and which one is not. So it's just about training yourself to learn how to feel these visceral connections to things.
That's so interesting. So I'm going to ask Lisa to pop on here because she has some experience in this area of discerning between organic and non-organic. And so I'm wondering if you could share with us, Lisa, about some of the work that you've done.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. You knew that had my name on it. Um, yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up because as you were talking before, I was thinking about calibration. And that was some of the work that I used to do. We were, um, very scientifically testing food to see like the different nutrient levels. And for example, I did a study where I sent in samples of organic, but one was grown in soil, but one was grown hydroponically of tomatoes. And a lot of people don't know that almost every tomato you pick up in a grocery store is hydroponically grown. And of course, I found a lot less nutrients in the ones that were hydroponically grown. So people used to ask me a lot. They used to say, "Can you tell just by looking at it?" And I would say, "Well, I can, but I don't know if everyone can. I can definitely tell you." That's how my calibration has been refined, throughout my entire life of what is and what isn't, what's true. And I have, I have developed that capacity to do that. And frequency is that medium, right? I don't even have to hold it. I can just be, whatever around it or whatever, and that's how we choose things. And I think lots of times we don't even realize that that's what we're doing, right? But I think that calibration piece is really key. And Linda touched on it a little bit, by talking about, programming, right? Because, we have programming, obviously from, that's societal and intentional. And then we have programming, that we just kind of inherit, that our DNA is, recorded and is holding on to, or actually more accurately is probably in our field. And our DNA is tuning into it, right? Because we're calibrated for that, to tune into those, very subtle beliefs and habits and things like that. So yeah, recalibrating yourself um is totally possible. That's the thing that other thing that we're learning, right? Is how sort of malleable we are because we are these multidimensional beings. And like Bruce Lipton's research has shown us that, DNA is not the final, arbiter, or rather, our genes are not the final arbiter of our blueprint. And, we come in with a spiritual blueprint, if you will, of our soul, of our essence. And, my journey has been to realign my human blueprint, for that. And of course, in doing that, you know, initiating that healing as communicated through my DNA to my ancestors and to my lineage, and of course to humanity. And the medium for that, of course, is frequency, right?
You have a story, I think, that you could share that you told me that really points to the power and difference that intentional frequency makes. And it was the story about a farmer who was using music. Can
Yeah.
you tell that story?
Yeah, yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. It's one of my favorites. Um, yeah, I was actually on this farmstead. She grew vegetables. Her home wasn't a typical farmhouse. It was on Vastu architecture, so her front door faced east, back west, lined with the solstices and things like that. So it wasn't a typical place, it was all set on this whole idea, right, of coherence, I guess is really what we're getting to. But I went there and it was the hottest day. And so it was very distracting because it was so hot and I was doing manual labor because we were picking up like greenhouse pieces, and loading them. And the only reason I'm sharing that is because even despite that experience I was having, I was totally drawn to what was being shown to me in nature. And I just remember looking up through the sunlight and seeing, like, I noticed a difference in the leaves and just how the leaves had kind of a coherence. And I noted that. And then as I started walking around the farm, I felt like I was like, I don't know, like in a fifth dimensional reality. It was so crazy. You know, everything had this kind of coherence about it. And just like this beautiful, I want to say geometry, but not perfectly symmetrical, but it was like I could sense that things had grown supported in that way, for coherence. And so when we went in for dinner, I asked I asked her, I'm like, what are you doing here? I'm like, this is like 5D living. I'm like, what are you doing? And she says, I'm so glad, that you noticed. She was trying to sell her house at the time, and she's like, a lot of people are not, they don't pick up on that. And she says, well, what I do, because she does the minerals, which, you're familiar, Kay, that I do that whole thing. I offer, um, like a garden kit to help people grow that way. And then so she does all that, plugs into the biological systems rather. And then when that's kind of set, the medium in the physical world, she adds in the vibration of recitations. So like chanting, like kind of low on speakers. And that's what did it. And all of that worked together in harmony. And the plants were that beautiful manifestation, right? The matter that formed in that coherent space.
Beautiful, thank you. I just know Megan Emily's going to be chanting to her vegetables not too
Nice,
long
I
from
love it. Uh-huh.
I already have.
uh, um, Megan, what does it mean when we refer to, what does it actually mean when we refer to things and people as either low or high vibration or frequency?
Okay. it feels very opinionated and judgy, doesn't it? Like, whoa, like it just struck me like, holy cow, that feels like we're poised for judgment if we're not careful, right?
Yeah.
So what just popped into my mind immediately was, is this life affirming or not? And something that's life affirming would to me, be in the high vibe category, and something that is life depleting might be in the lower vibration now, or frequency. I keep using the word vibration as well. But it's so much more than that. That's kind of my knee-jerk answer. I believe that when things become symbiotic, it's high frequency, right? Meaning, is it mindful? Is it conscious? Is this frequency aware of other frequencies, and that I'm affecting the other frequencies around me in a way? And it's not that I'm not here to say whether a crystal or a rock knows if I'm present or not. I personally believe it does. I think there's an exchange of frequency between a rock and I'm not the only one outputting. There's an exchange there. But I believe that to me, it's where does the mindfulness come in? Are we present? Is this action, this movement, this frequency, um, uh, uh, working in union with it, right? The big grand it. So I know that's, not a really deep answer, but I hadn't reflected on that too much, to be honest. And I know, for me, what is our capacity as well? Where are we at? Or, I'm talking about human, and my human experience of is this high or low vibe? And that phrase, your vibe attracts your tribe, kind of comes into mind as well, because we do put out these frequencies, and we pull people into our field, and we push people out of our field with these frequencies. There's this constant interplay between, human to human, human to animal, human to object, etc. But that whole like vibe attracting your tribe, you know I might think someone is lower vibration, and that's why I want to be very careful, because I don't want that to be a judgment. It's also, where are we matchmaking here? It's not everything doesn't have to be a match with everything else. It's very important that we're, redirected, or that we're rejected, right? That whole rejection is protection. So I know I'm kind of off a little bit, but human to human is where I really can experience and experiment with this the most, I think. I know that there's a knowing, and intuition comes into play big time, like, whoa, protection, like that's not my vibe, or that feels good, that feels safe, I can go that direction.
Yeah.
It's a
I
big
think
one.
I brought up this question because to me it speaks to not as to whether something is good or bad. It's that the what Lisa talked about, coherent. Is it coherent? And also this capacity for entrainment, where if we are at a certain, if we're vibrating at a certain level and we want to feel more of that or better, I guess, we can come into proximity with things that vibrate in a way that lift us. Like a lot of you have mentioned that before. Certain situations, certain clothing, certain food, also certain environments. I know that I was just in a national park recently, and I just have to say I'm not a miscellaneous tree hugger. I am a tree hugger because it feels so good. And I feel like trees that have been around for 200 years or 300 years are just have a high vibration. I can't explain it. So I'm wondering if, Joan, you could ask, if you could tell us how your personal awareness of frequency impacts your spiritual life and how it impacts your daily life.
Sure. I'll give it a go. We'll see. Um, I really love the story that Lisa shared. And for me, I really have come to know myself as a mystic, as a feminine mystic, and to really be attuned to the creation-centered spirituality. So for me, I do experience God and the sacred through the natural world quite a bit. So hearing the story about that farm and having moments with plants, having moments with Molly, who was very drawn to this conversation initially. She really wanted to be like, she was taking in what y'all were saying. So for me, that is certainly one way. And a couple of the things that have been going through my mind are I've been alternatingly listening and reading Autobiography of a Yogi for the second or third time around and revisiting the places where he is also sharing stories about the plant world, whether it was Burbank, who developed the Burbank roses, or there was an Indian scientist way back in the 1800s who was looking at the frequency of plants and how just the intention of love, and that is also a frequency that I consider. It's like, what is the frequency of love? How can I be in that? But this person was looking at how that impacts plant life and whatnot. And I've heard, what's his name, Zach Bush, certainly talk about that as well, in terms of plants being able to sense when their caretakers are coming, just like animals can sense that. So I feel like I've gone off down the trail a little bit, but I'm hoping that answers the question.
Well, I mean, when you are, let's say, arranging your personal environment, are you attuning to frequency? How do you recognize it? Uh,
Mm. Mm. So I'm someone who thrives in space and order, and I have long, and that's not necessarily what my house looks like all the time, because I live with other people who don't necessarily value that to the same extent. Um, but for me, there is a certain frequency that comes with like divine order. It doesn't have to be like pristine and perfect. But I've also been someone, like, as you can see behind me, I have different objects and things, and they have a frequency that I value and that I want to have present in the space with me. And ever since I was a teeny little girl, I was doing that kind of thing. And when I went away to college, I had my little, my thing. So it's been an innate part of how I relate to life, my surroundings, the outer world, other other people.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's so interesting the way that frequency really does impact our daily life. I think about it in such a profound way. So I know, like, if I have an inclination toward ADHD, I will say. On certain days, I have 25 different projects going at once. And I notice that when I have the laundry on the table and I'm pickling cucumbers over here and I'm trying to write something over here, and then I start on a whole new cleaning out a closet or whatever. That when I'm in that state and I go out into the world, there's traffic, there's noise, there's people cutting each other off, there's an encounter at the grocery store that doesn't feel peaceful, all of those things. And so I think that if you are longing to have a more peaceful environment, a more peaceful life, a more peaceful state of mind, paying attention to some of these things can go a long way. I want to bring in Linda here because Linda has a fascinating story about frequency. I would say that her and most of her life is now concerned with frequency. So, can you share a little bit about this enormous life-changing project that you've been working on?
Yeah, well, I've always had an unusual sensitivity to frequencies. Even as a child, I just didn't know that that's what was happening. Um, so it's always been with me. I've always been very sensitive and intuitive and feeling insects and all kinds of things, throughout my entire life. So the sensitivity to frequency is not new. My understanding that it was working with frequencies and my understanding of all this has gotten stronger as I've gotten older. And most recently, back in April of 2024, I shattered my elbow hiking. And I have a plate and 10 screws that they put in my arm to make sure my arm stays together. And and as it was healing, I started getting this very intense impulse to create art, and it was energetic. And so I won't go into the whole story about how it happened, but I got supplies and I started creating art. And in the last year and 9 months, I've created 44 pieces of what I call frequency art. And these are basically frequencies that are coming into our planet. This is what I have been feeling. It's not like I don't hear a voice, but I get the knowing of what this is, and I get the visceral experience of the experience of creating these pieces. And these frequencies are here to help disrupt the kind of um, uh, I'm trying to think of the word. It's like the stuck energy that we have right now. Everything is stuck in concrete. So these come in to help us disrupt these, and then behind them come other technologies, which are frequencies that are here to help rebuild. So it's been fascinating for me to experience it. And the art comes in as it's very complex. It comes in first as an architecture because frequencies need an architecture. They need something to hold things together so these frequencies can become something. And then once I have this sort of drawing architecture, then what comes in is what I call the landing strip, which is a series of color and form, which eventually has to balance out because the frequencies may come in very strong in one area. Then I have to balance out those frequencies in another area. And then once I get enough of the landing strip in, then comes the codes and messages. And these embed in the landing strip until I work on it long enough until it literally activates and the piece becomes alive and the energy and the frequencies begin to interact with me and with anyone who's looking at them. On Friday, I just had the opening of my first art exhibit at the Fine Arts Museum of Sedona. I have 16 pieces there, and it's the first time they've hung together in this public space, and it's been quite interesting. At the opening night, everybody was high on the energies. It was very interesting to watch. Everyone was really happy and they were very energized and very activated. So I'm still working and I'm bringing in, it was interesting, the whole idea that Megan talked about being a language. I feel like I am literally bringing in a language, a library of visual language, that each piece is communicating something through the frequencies that it is emitting, and that it is building a conversation. That when eventually I lay this out in a certain way, when all the pieces are complete, you will be able to walk through this, and each piece will communicate something energetically to you so that by the end, you have had a visceral experience of some type of transformation within yourself. So I've been kind of crazy for the last 2 years, bringing this in. But it's given me, like I said, that's why I said when I first started, it's given me a whole new understanding of frequency, and how, oh, whoops, how complex it is. Cash, this is a frequency. And it's been really educational for me to learn just how it is really beyond our understanding to a certain degree, because the energies that are coming in go far beyond what I understood about frequencies. You know, I look at frequencies as what's on the planet, what's in my life, but these go way beyond that, and they come in, and that's why I said it's kind of like a fabric in our universe, and it has all kinds of frequencies. Some we feel, some we don't feel, some we're connected to, some we're not connected to. And it's true, it's important to have dissonance. And a lot of the art that I'm working on, I actually hate these things for a very long time while I'm working on them, and I make a lot of mistakes, but it's teaching me about life and about how you don't stop when you're in the middle of a mistake. You just keep going, because eventually that dissonance will turn into resonance. So
Mm,
it's been very educational to me about working with life, and it's all frequency based. And I think in the future, everyone is going to start understanding and feeling that ability to tap into these things within them, and then they will grow from there. And I think it's a really exciting time because we really need it right now.
yeah, yeah. I've seen many of your paintings, and I love the description of them being like a language, because there's a lot happening in
There's
these
a
things. And
lot happening in them.
yeah,
Yes.
and if you try to decipher, you'll get lost because there's so much. And I'm gonna
Can't think
like,
about it. You have to,
yeah,
that's the whole thing about frequency. You have to just allow the energy of it to move into you without attaching your brain to it.
yeah, yeah. I'm gonna link your Instagram in the notes, so that people can go to your page and see
Okay.
some of the paintings, while you're getting your website together.
No, no, the website's up.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll link that as well.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. And I really feel like it's no different than really music.
No,
Um,
it's all frequency.
yeah, it's all frequency.
That's
And
it.
we
Everything is
just,
frequency. It really is. It's the simplest term for all of it. It's just that it's so everything that it's hard to can bring it down to our little pea brain minds to explain.
right, right. I want to ask Cerise, about kind of what I really want to get at is some practical ways that people can start to use their awareness of their frequency. So, Cerise, I was wondering if I could ask you, how do you go about developing a knowledge of the 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 workings of frequency in your life?
Um, it's a really good question. I mean, one of the things that I've been exploring personally, has been some of these devices that emit frequencies, for healing purposes. So like PEMF, Scalar, Rife, because I like to facilitate healing, for myself and others. And so that is one way um, that one thing that I've been exploring a lot. And there are stories of people that have cured, different ailments from using, different frequencies. But also different frequencies can be used, with some of these devices for different things, for happiness, for focus, for sleep, for healing, for so many different things. So I've been exploring that for myself, using some of these devices, trying these different frequencies out to see how my body feels with each of these frequencies. What I've also noticed is, I live in Bergen County, New Jersey, which is very, very close. I'm about 15 minutes from New York City, which has a very strong frequency. There's like a humming almost, and a pulse to the city, that's live. And so many of us who live here and close by, it's really hard to pay attention to how your body's feeling. What I've noticed for myself is that when I go on a vacation and I'm on a beach, somewhere else far away, I'm able to pay attention to it a lot more and feel the differences in the frequencies of the places that I'm at. And so, like, for example, Sedona, with the vortices, you know, um, you, different places in Europe that, Greece and, the beaches and stuff. And so I've been paying attention to those things just to, um, so places I think is definitely one area. But earlier when I was talking about music, you know, you, I've noticed for myself, I can get myself out of a funk really fast if I move my body and listen to, you know, some music that's very upbeat, bring that frequency in. We talked about the food. I've noticed that. So you can change, things that are going on in your life just by changing certain things, the environment, we've talked about people. So people, food, music. I've done sound baths, with crystal balls to crystal bowls that really can change, one's frequency and release negativity and just put you in a whole different space. So, those are just some, practical things that I can think of that I've been working with to explore frequency more for myself.
Oh, that's lovely. I think the potential. I have heard that sound is the future of medicine, and I believe that completely because, and it isn't always like music how we think about music. Sometimes it's complex sound that is emitting a certain frequency that doesn't sound like an ordinary song, but a lot of it does sound like that. And one example of that is I happened to be reading something and saw that some of Beethoven's sonatas have an impact on the frequency and duration of seizures for people with epilepsy. And my ceramics teacher's daughter was diagnosed at 3 years old with epilepsy, and she had sort of a type that didn't allow her brain to rest very much. And so I told her about this study, and she's had so they play it in the car, they play it in their home, they play it overnight when she's sleeping, and it's had a dramatic impact on her seizure frequency. So I think that, and I'm gonna link below some of my favorite frequency music, and we'll have everybody do that as well. But there is, you don't even need science to tell you that certain types of music can lift you out of a mood, like, yeah. So,
If I
Megan, let me,
can. Oh,
hmm?
I'm sorry. I just had something I wanted to add to that about the
Yeah,
music, if I
yes,
may.
please.
Because I just had this really fascinating conversation just a couple of days ago with a scientist who is, I won't go down this rabbit hole, but is studying like foreign materials that are showing up in our tissue and like our blood and things like that. Okay. And she was telling me, she said, musicians are far better off. She's like, everyone has it, there's no exception. But I've found that musicians and music in particular, and certain types of music, like what you're referring to, um, protect our cells. She says it prevents these materials from going intracellular. That's how powerful it is.
Wow, that's amazing. And Megan, can you speak to this because you're a musician and I'm sure you have a lot of experience with, especially with percussion.
With
Um,
percussion,
yeah,
yeah. And percussion in particular, it's so primal, right? It's so, I mean, it's everyone's language. People who don't think they're musical or have rhythm, you will catch yourself walking in rhythm. I challenge you because we implement rhythm all the time without realizing it. But I mean, the examples and samples and revelations and revolutions that have happened in my own personal life, they just seem to be one way, like waving from one musical experience to the next. I remember growing up in church and feeling in a Catholic church, and singing was always the part that got me. I remember having the lump in my throat when I was singing, and at the time, I didn't, I'm 5 years old, 7 years old, even 11 years old. I didn't understand fully what was happening. I sure did feel it though. And even at that age, within a faith that I didn't carry with me by any means. I was having spiritual experiences with summoning spirit, right, in a group. And I think that's when many of us have those experiences in our car where we have to pull over and we're just like, we can't drive. We're crying so hard from music. So we have these experiences alone with music all the time. But wow, when we come together, right? And if you haven't been to a drum circle, go to a drum circle. I've recently found here that it's just called a singing circle. Just a singing circle. There's no dogma attached. I'm like, this feels so wonderful. I can't wait to see what just singing is. So yes, for me, music, it really has always been a part of my life where I was experiencing it by receiving it and being moved by it. And, Beethoven was having an impact on me as well. But then when I always knew there was this inner musician, and coming full circle back to the word language, I had something to say. And I realized that as it started really, I mean, I've been playing drums. I've been hitting and shaking things since I was 15, 16 years old, regularly in bands and all of that. I still didn't even consider myself a musician. People would ask me if I was a musician. I'd say, no, I just play the drums. Oh, I just hold the rhythm down, like, what is that? It didn't occur to me because it was so natural to me. But then when I picked up other instruments, I was a novice. I was green, and then of course through chanting, it has saved me many times. It's given me language, even though I'm chanting in languages, ironically, that aren't my own. Um, the power of connecting with whatever you want to connect through music is so potent. It's at our fingertips, and it's just, oh, it's my lifeline. And I have been dancing a lot too. I know we brought that up on one of the panels. That was my 2026 is to dance regularly. So
Beautiful. I'm glad to hear that's happening for you. We're going to conclude shortly, but I was wondering if anybody has anything to add about, suggestions on how to become more familiar with your frequency, how to raise your frequency, and how to learn more about it. Anybody?
Observation.
Observation.
I was going to say the same thing. Be very quiet and observe other frequencies.
Yeah.
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 And your life, right? Your life's your mirror of what your
Mhm.
frequency is,
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's such wonderful news that we have so much power in our own life to shift our own lives. And I think we're going to learn a lot about that in the coming years. So I just want to thank you all for joining us today for this complex and intriguing topic. And thank you to everybody watching. So see you later.
Hi, thank you, friends.
Bye, everybody.